Well, we have a special interview this morning. I have with me Margaret Owen, the president of Widows for Peace Through Democracy. It's an NGO based in London. She's right here in our studios. She's also the representative for widows in the United Nations and has also been awarded the Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II. Now, what we want to find out from her is what she's doing in Ghana, and then also to talk with her about her work in the UN. So good morning, Margaret, and welcome to the AM show.
Wonderful to be here, wonderful.
I have to ask, are you a widow?
I've been a widow for 22 years.
22 years?
Yes.
Whoa.
But the extraordinary thing is that for 30 years before that, I'd worked on women's rights as a human rights lawyer, and I never thought about widowhood until my husband died, and an African woman from Malawi who walked into my house, looked around and said, "You mean your husband's brothers let you stay here and keep all these things?" And that remark was the catalyst for suddenly unwrapping that hugely taboo and hidden subject, the invisibility of widows and the terrible, terrible injustices they suffer in many countries.
Wow. It must have been a bit of, I don't know if culture shock is the right phrase here, but things are done differently in different parts of the world. And I'm sure that wasn't your experience. As you said, it wasn't until someone from a different culture made an offhand remark, I'd say, that you noticed, no, it's not the same for me as it is for her. That's what pushed you into it.
It did trigger. I think I knew a little bit about it because I'd been head of law and policy at International Planned Parenthood Federation, working on the status of women. So I think I must have known something about it because it sort of rang. I realised something was going on. And then I realised that nobody was really looking at it. And of course, in my country, I come from the UK, in developed countries like mine, we don't have any of these traditions. You know, we don't have any problems with the law or inheritance, or there isn't any stigma about widowhood. Yes, we are sad and maybe we're not quite the same socially, but it's nothing like the real discrimination that widows suffer, whatever the law says, across regions in Africa, all over Africa, in South Asia, in the Middle East, and other countries, maybe in the Far East. But it's absolutely essential that we deal with this now, and that governments that are ultimately responsible actually address and do all they can to actually eliminate this terrible discrimination, abuse, which is really extreme and systematic. It's governments that have got to act. And I'm thrilled to be in Ghana because 2 days ago, this amazing Mama Zimbi, who I'm an absolute worship, Mama Zimbi, worship. I feel so proud I know Mama Zimbi. And she invited me to this incredible conference that we had on Saturday for International Widows' Day. And I saw 4,000, she's got together. In this country, 4,000 widows were there from all over Ghana.
Wow.
And I was so impressed by that day. And I work a lot all over the world, and I work through the United Nations. But we've never had a regional conference in Africa on widowhood. And the things that happen to widows in Ghana, well, they happen all over Africa, in every country. And we've never seen such a huge explosion in the numbers of widows now because of armed conflict, because of revolutions, because of HIV and AIDS, and of course, because of harmful traditional practices where very young girls are married to much older men. And so in Ghana, I'm so impressed. I think that Ghana is the most peaceful and stable country in the whole of Africa. And with Mama Zimbi able to actually bring together 4,000 widows, it's the perfect country to be the host for a regional conference on widows in Africa, so that we can really get governments to address the terrible abuses and discrimination.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to work for. And now I'm really thrilled because 3 days ago I got an email from the United Nations, from the UN Women, from the Lakshmi Puri, who is the acting head of UN Women in New York, and they and Ban Ki-moon have made a declaration how really important it is that we address this issue. I don't want to talk for too long because you want to ask questions, but you know, I have to say this, that widowhood is not a women's issue alone, it's one for the whole of society, because when you have widows who are kicked out of their homes, aren't allowed to inherit property or land, are illiterate or impoverished, they can't afford to educate their children. And very often their situation makes them sell off or get rid of their young girls to marriages to quite unsuitable older men.
Yeah.
And then the children who don't go to school become a cost to the country, and they should be a contribution to the country because they are not educated. So it's about trying to develop a societies where everybody is equal, and the impact of widowhood on the whole of society in its future is really serious, because widowhood is a root cause of poverty, and if you don't look at and address it, then you actually expand poverty to the next generation as well.
I had never thought about it in the way you're putting it now. Maybe, as you said, it's not something you think about until it happens to you or it's brought closer to you. But Ghana is a country of many different cultures, many different ethnic practices. I'm just wondering how we're going to find a solution to them. What might work for one ethnic group won't work for another. That's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy. Do we really have the wherewithal to push it through?
Oh yes. I mean, you talk about the differences and all the different ethnic groups there are in Ghana, and there are in every single African country, because remember it was all the empires that cut and made all these borders, you know, irrespective of ethnicity. But actually they all suffer in the same way, across religion, across ethnicities, across class, across caste, whether you're in South Asia, whether you're in Sri Lanka with the Tamils, or with the Nepal or India or anywhere in Africa, all widows suffer from the same discrimination and lack of access to justice. And what's really interesting, because I've worked in countries that are coming out of conflict, that actually when you have, for example, the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda, or you have the Kosovo Albanians and the Serbs in Kosovo, the widows, whatever side they were on, they all suffer the same disadvantages, and they all have the same hopes. And the amazing thing is that in conflict-afflicted countries, widows are able to put their arms across the ethnic and religious divides more than maybe married women whose husbands say, oh, you shouldn't talk to that side, they're the enemy. So I don't think it matters, because
so then you think
everywhere
we can use
yes, it doesn't, that is
widows as a unifying factor?
I think widows are a great unifying factor, and I think that they're really important agents of change. And I never want, in all our work, I never want to see widows classified as simply as victims. I want to see them as actually incredible agents of change, and strong women who are already hugely contributing to the economic and social life of the country. They're the sole carers of children. They're looking after orphans, the elderly and the sick. They're also farmers and workers. So they've got a lot that they contribute, and that's got to be acknowledged, not just as victims, but as their important roles. And we've got to really criminalise all those actions that deprive widows of their rights.
All right, I just need to ask this question though. You've been in Ghana for a while and you've spoken with a number of widows, I'm sure. Have you found anything unique about Ghanaian widows?
Well, I think they're unique because they've got Mama Zimbi. I mean, that is their uniqueness, because I don't know any other country in Africa which could bring all the widows of the country across together, the country, and from all the different ethnic groups together like that. And that's incredible. And what I did, and also I came quite ignorant because it's my first time in Ghana.
All right.
And I thought, but you've got all these amazing laws. You're one of the very few countries, Malawi is another one, which has an annex to your penal code, which says that it's a crime to coerce a widow into degrading and harmful traditional practices in the mourning and burial ceremonies. And this is a taboo subject. It includes things like ritual cleansing, horrible, horrible things that happen to widows, which nobody ever wants to talk about. So you've got this amazing law. You're only one of 2 or 3 countries in Africa, and nobody does anything about it.
It's something I would love to talk about some more. Unfortunately, I don't have the time.
It's a taboo subject, and we have to lift the blanket off it.
All right. But we will find an opportunity for us to explore it a little more.
I have to say quickly, if I've got time, next year, the first regional conference of widowhood must be in Ghana, with Mama Zimbi as its queen.
Well, I am sure Mama Zimbi will be working that out. She's a very special person here, especially here at Multi TV, and we're grateful for the work that she's doing. We're grateful that you came in. I understand you're 81 years old. I do not know how you managed to keep up with all of this activity. But thank you. Thank you for coming.
Medasi.
Mama Zimbi does that, doesn't she? Medasi. So thank you for coming. Thank you for taking an interest in Ghanaian widows and for helping Mama Zimbi champion her cause. We will be spending more time on this issue on another show. But for now, that's all we have in this interview. We'll be coming up with My Community.